This is called The Art of Making Fermented Sausages. And it is not an uncommon one, by Stanley and Adam Mariansky. And this one's great if you want the technical knowledge. I mean, graphs. I can't believe how thorough these guys are. It's really amazing.
For the science. What's happening
glucose, exactly the effect of nitrite, exactly the names of all the bacteria that create different flavors and acid, the names of all the molds and everything. It's really great. They document the fast fermenting process and the slow fermenting process. They define the exactly what Clostridium botulinum does, how they have charts, as to how to prevent, E. coli or Listeria or any clostridial bacteria. Mm-hmm. So that is a really good one to learn the vocabulary and learn the way bacteria functions. So that's excellent. And they've done a lot to restore lots of Polish recipes to existence. They have a big Central European restorative, archaeological bank of really cool European products. Mm-hmm. The only tricky thing about that book is that it's written by technicians, and so it can be ambiguous sometimes. It needed a little editing, in my humble opinion, from like a writer, I think, because those guys are just they're super intelligent and diligent, and they're technicians, and they can define everything perfectly. And sometimes you can get a little lost just in their writing style, in the language. Mm-hmm. It's a little confusing. Just know that it's not the technical information that is difficult to digest there. But you do have to be committed. You have to be committed. It's the writing style. Like, there are some statements that they make in here that are just, upon first reading, utterly contradictory. Oh my gosh. So which one is it?
You have to weed through it.
But you go through it again. What exactly are they saying? Because they are extremely precise. You have to really pay attention, and you'll get it. So that is a great one.
Going from that to someone who can write.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So aesthetically motivated, as it were. These are the other sources are the River Cottage. And you will see these guys decried to no end in a lot of really pseudo-professional hobbyists online, the River Cottage, because they unapologetically and without draconian caveats tell you how to make salami without nitrite and starter cultures. And these are the only recipes I've found for that in the English language, is these guys.
Yeah.
And this one is great. This is Steve Lamb's handbook, River Cottage handbook number 13 on curing and smoking. And he goes into the science with you and how it works and why it works to do it without the starter cultures. But without, taking sides. It's you do what you like.
Yeah.
Here's the way you would do it if you wanted to do.
We love their non-polarizing, very non-American approach.
Yeah,
to this.
It's not argumentative at all. They're not opposed to nitrites. And neither am I.
It's just not for them.
Yeah. But
that's how they actually put it sometimes.
Yeah. So this one is great. It's well written, and it's all geared towards the small scale, which is, I should say, what all of this is geared toward.
Right.
This entire podcast. This is not. You would not be able to make salami the way I have described for retail, unless you work extensively and expensively with the USDA and some writing new HACCPs and variances to the food code.
I was actually going to get to that.
Yeah. But that's a whole different story. So this is all for home consumption. Yeah. Yes, this is a good one. And then he's got a similar recipe in the River Cottage cookbook. Ironically, it is not in the River Cottage meat book. It's in the cookbook. And he's got a salami recipe in here, as well as this.
Got a whole pig section in there. Right?
Yeah, which includes the raising and the cooking and the curing of a pig, which is awesome. That book was really a significant inspiration for us, and still is today. So really good stuff in there. Other than that, any American book will have that overplayed draconian warnings about botulism
just pages
and
and pages, whereas like the River Cottage just spent a paragraph or two describing add 2-3% by weight. Yeah. Treat it like fresh sausage. Yeah. Except hang it. Yeah. He's really just simplistic.
It is, and it's not because he is irresponsible or unscientific. Yeah. It's because we do actually understand the conditions wherein Clostridium botulinum can proliferate, and if we provide the hurdles of a low pH, bound water,
healthy pork,
and enough salt, it'll be okay. Mm-hmm. That's not just a devil may care,
Right.
Oh, it'll just be fine. It's not that.
We are feeding our families here.
It's also taking into account another essential element when developing your food science that is too often rejected as viable data, because everyone before the scientific revolution is a moron and everyone after is a genius, and which is obviously not true. And so the data of history is often rejected, whereas I think what we have in history is lots of phenomena that need to be scientifically described rather than rejected for the prescription of a different method. And this is how salami has been made for centuries, and that is not unimportant. Mm-hmm. That needs to be described. How does that work then? Well, then how have we been able to do that and not die? Mm-hmm. And it is in the name of liability and all the draconian warnings that I have seen the most unscientific claims made. Mm-hmm. And it drives me nuts because it has the appearance and the discourse of scientific legitimacy behind it. And among them are like why they say, well, salami does mean, the Latin word is botulus. It's like implying that people die of this so frequently that they named it botulism in Rome.
It's and continued to make it that way.
Bad history, bad claim, bad etymology, drives me nuts. Mm-hmm. Botulus was the Latin word for sausage, not death. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't used to refer to the phenomena of food poisoning caused by the Clostridium botulinum toxin. It wasn't used in that way until the 19th century when they discovered, isolated, and described Clostridium botulinum and the toxin and the spore. So there's just it's almost like because it is so dangerous, we can have flights of zealous, fear-mongering about it. It's like, no, that's not scientific. That is bad. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. Another one that is really frustrating to me is that pretty much any American that goes to Europe and learns from the Europeans changes the European recipe to include nitrates and starter cultures. Mm-hmm. So in Europe, they're still doing it this way, which is why I value the River Cottage, because they're a European source written in the English language, which is the one that I read, and they tap into that tradition. So like even, in Spain, this is a fun book to get, Charcuterie. This is my newest edition. A lot of fun, by Jeffrey Weiss, maybe. But it's wonderful. And, he's more even-handed about it. He'll say, a lot of the matanzas, where they did a lot of the processing, they didn't use any curing salts. But then he goes on to prescribe it in all of his recipes, which is fine. Mm-hmm. The ones that get to me are when they travel Europe, and I have one particular work in mind, kind of popular, and it just blew my mind. But they go through all of Italy, discovering all of the salumeria recipes, and they say that no salumieri, which I think is how you say it, salami curer, that they talked to admitted to using nitrates and starter cultures.
Yeah. Tricky little word there.
Yeah, and it's like, what a backwards way to accuse them all of lying. Mm-hmm. Like, I just don't like that. It seemed very silly to me. Mm-hmm. It's like, so, are you going to receive the data or just assume they're all lying?
Yeah, you have to be able to twist your own narrative.
A little bit.
Or accommodate.
Because what if they actually say what they do and they aren't using any?
Yeah.
which
you might have to learn.
Likely. I don't know why they would be interested in lying about that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, we got to describe that phenomena, describe why it works with all of our scientific apparatuses and methods, and describe it because it's data.
We have to be able to accommodate, what comes first, theory or the practice?
Right.
And sometimes we get so attached to a particular theory that we're not open to, well, it actually is operating this way in practice.
Yeah.
So maybe we should change our theory.
Because you work yourself into the very unscientific place of saying, well, it works in practice, but does it work in theory?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So all of that to say, to make peasant home-cured salami without nitrate and starter cultures, you don't have to cast off the scientific food science.
Yeah.
Exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
You take on the onus of having to describe things more accurately, without waffling, without exaggerated claims in either direction. So educate yourself. And I found this one, The Art of Making Fermented Sausages, to be the most beneficial in that regard for me, by Stanley Mariansky and Adam Mariansky.